This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is a Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, as always, I'm getting sick of them, Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
And Dave Oster.
Hey, everybody.
Ricky's not bringing the energy of the What's Up Nation.
No finger guns. He ain't popping them pistols.
No video podcast. I can't see me.
See, I mean...
I feel like your fans really need you to do it every week. But if they can't see you...
I finger gunned in my heart.
But outside of Ben, I mean, What's Up Nation kind of crumbling. I haven't been seeing a lot, so...
it's still alive.
It's
We're coming up on January, too.
It's losing its energy a little bit.
What's up?
It's losing its energy a little bit. But anyways, on this episode of the Fast Break Podcast, we are going to be talking about the new CBA that was just signed and just agreed upon between the Players Union and the NBA. We're going to be talking about how it affects the league. It's going to be going in effect the 2018-2019 season, I believe, so that offseason going into that season. So we will be talking about that. Then we're also going to be talking about the Utah Jazz. Are they built for the future? If they could bring back Gordon Hayward, how long can they actually have a reign in the NBA, and can they actually win a championship down the road? And then we're going to wrap it up talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're going to be talking about, can he become a superstar in Milwaukee? Is he going to be limited by his market? Because obviously he's been playing at a lights out level, but is he going to be limited by this Milwaukee market? But anyways, let's jump in, guys. We are going to be talking about the new CBA agreed upon by the Players Union and the NBA. And the first thing that is obviously clear, something that was obviously made clear by the Players Union and probably more of the owners, was that super teams are going to be hopefully a thing of the past in their mind, because the way that now extensions and re-signing players have been built, teams that have a player like, say Kevin Durant, they are going to be able to offer him significantly more money. And the kind of the example that was brought up to me was that the Pelicans can offer Anthony Davis something when he does resign, something like a 6-year contract worth $250 million, but on the market he would get 4 years, $190 million. So obviously hurting player salaries and trying to limit super teams. So first off, do you think the new CBA, and specifically to super teams, is good for the NBA?
I think it's great for the NBA because, well, it feels like it's almost hurting players' free agency, and it is. It's outright out there to damage free agency. The NBA doesn't like super teams. The NBA likes parity. Mm-hmm. They want to see a fair level of competition. Just because you're friends with everybody doesn't mean you can all stack up on one team and beat everybody down and make the NBA a worse product for it. So I like the new CBA because it kind of saves the smaller markets, because teams like the Pelicans, like OKC, and I mean even the Jazz, even like Milwaukee, they're not going to be, without this CBA, they wouldn't be able to retain top talent without players like having some deep connection to the city. There's no logical reason the player would pass up on playing on a better team with a better chance to win a championship other than pride for their city. Now it's the lowest common denominator of all people is money. It's just out and out. We can give you the most money if you stick with us. I think it's great.
See, I'm leaning more toward, when I first heard it, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this, because yes, in principle, it feels great where it's like, oh, Kevin Durant, you get to keep a star like him. You get to keep Russell Westbrook. Like Anthony Davis coming up, you get to keep him in
Well, you at least
New
have
Orleans.
a better chance.
These players aren't going to, let's be honest, they're not going to walk because money talks. Most players are going to take money over anywhere else, because in the end we want to make the most money that we can make.
We'll say a guy like in Anthony Davis. I mean, obviously he would be walking away from a lot of money here, but I mean, the one thing with this is that I just want to say, like, if he has a bad relationship with the owner, say like a CP3, but he won't get traded away, and when CP3 wanted out of New Orleans and possibly he wasn't able to be traded away, they can obviously lose significant money but still be able to leave.
On the flip side, though, I kind of feel like this is a bad thing for the NBA, only because this is going to put a ton of pressure on GMs to hit on draft picks. Well, you don't hit on draft picks, that means fans are going to be like, great, we got this scrub for X amount of years, and then great, we get to maybe sign him for 6 years if we want to.
I agree with you. I think it also hurts Scrooge McDuck owners, too, because in Chicago, we know we've got a cheap owner, and that hurts us in so many cases.
And we're usually a lottery team, so we're not getting the creme de la creme in the draft.
But one thing I want to bring up about that, though, is if people do see like a superstar, at least a guy in the top 5 where he could be a fringe top 5 player, but you say you're back at 11, you might want to mortgage your future.
You're definitely more incentivized.
And that might be more interesting and make the draft more interesting, where you want to move up, so you're able to not only get this guy for his rookie contract, but then keep him for longer because you can offer him more money. You could have a guy for 10
years. I mean, it's outrageous how long that if everything plays out right, like the way you could lock down a player is fantastic for an owner, but at the same time, as a player, like.
I mean, it could be good for players too, because you're still getting money.
Right. I mean, you're still going to get money, but having to walk away from tens of millions of dollars just to have your preferential choice of free agency, I mean, that almost feels like a slap in the face. So I don't know from a player standpoint if they're all fans of this.
Part of me feels like, and this is why I'm generally right now saying I say it's a loss. I think it's not the worst, but it's one of those things that I'm not happy with, because one, I feel like players. Like, I'm going to use Anthony Davis as
because he's in a shit situation.
He's in the shittiest situation. Do I go somewhere and take less years and less money, or do I stay in this? And I'm going to call it a shithole in New Orleans.
I mean, New Orleans is a fantastic city, but the organization
for basketball.
Yeah, you're like Anthony Davis because of this CBA. I am going to say he's never going to win a championship, never. Because it's going to be, I'm going to sign here for 6 years, the max money, because I'm going to take my money over going somewhere else, and then the organization's not going to be able to build around me. Another interesting thing that I think could happen because of this, we had the weird rule this year where, after the draft lottery, kids out of college were able to kind of pull their name, like, I'm not coming into the draft anymore, because that lineup was solidified. If I'm a number 1 pick, and let's say I'll throw the 76ers out there just because they could be the number 1 pick. If they're there,
better be careful.
And I'm a kid who's like, I don't want to fucking play there. I wonder if more kids are going to say, fuck that. Because as a kid coming out of college, yes, you want the money, but you're going to be locked into that. You're going to feel like you're locked into that situation because of the Benjamins.
It is a very high gamble, though, for a guy to say, I'm going to walk away from possibly $250 million and then get injured in college and then lose all that money.
But on the same side, if you're going to look at it in an NBA side, you want to go. You want to go to a team you want to play for.
You could Eli Manning it and just say, I'm not going to play for you. Don't pick me. I'm not going to work out for you.
You could do that, but how many teams in the NBA would actually pass on that?
Elway, Manning are the two biggest, and they're both NFL, and I understand that. In the NBA, there hasn't been a large case that I can think of off the top of my head where a player just outright did that. I know KP, actually, Porzingis, refused workouts with the 76ers. So that, in a way, that's probably the closest thing we've had recently, because if your agent just says, no, we're not going to work out for you, as a team, you already feel that like cold edge of, okay, this guy's not going to be working with us to make it better, so we probably are going to pass on him.
The thing that's different there, and I just wanted to throw this in, is Porzingis, though. It's like, I feel like kids coming out of college and overseas kids are different. With Porzingis, it was like, well, okay, we don't really know a lot about this guy from what we've seen. Whereas college kids, it's like, we've seen what we got. We're still going to take you.
But also, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last draft with it was either Simmons or Ingram, they also refused workouts with one team
initially.
Because I just remember there was some reports. It was either Ben or Brandon. I think it was Ben with the 76ers.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing. I don't think guys like looking at the upcoming draft class
like Lonzo Ball,
Lonzo or Fultz or Giles will turn down because they're going to a certain situation. They want to play in the NBA, and I think that's the main thing for them.
I think the dream of making it. Yeah.
Well, it's always like I'm going to draw it back to the money. You want to go and make the money, but I'll use Fultz is different because he's on. I'm sorry, Sean. I know you're a Washington fan, but they're not they're not a team that's going to win anything, so they're not going to win championships. But like for a guy like Giles,
who cares about winning a college championship?
Coming from Duke, and you're like, hey, I won one once. I don't want to play for this team. I'll just come back and play for Coach K again. Because that sounds like such a bad thing.
But then you're not getting money in that,
and you're potentially losing out on your career.
Yeah, I mean,
because if a freak accident happens, that's it. You're no longer worth what you were because you chose to go back. Plus, I'm sorry, college. Like you get the guys who are college, 4-year, 5-year players. That's great. You can go win a couple championships. And if you come out in your 4th year, as a senior, great for you. But like underclassmen who are coming out as top 10 picks or as top, draft lottery picks, those guys, I'm sorry, none of them give a flying fuck about a college championship.
With big guys too. I mean, looking at Joel Embiid, Greg Oden, Nerlens Noel, they have very high significant time, and both they've a higher chance of getting injured just because of how big their bodies are.
Yep.
So I think that I could definitely see your point, but I'm just saying I don't see it happening.
Is like, I'm not saying like, oh, I won a college championship, I want to win another one. I'm just saying in Giles' case, if he chose like, I don't want to play for this team and this is where I'm probably going to go, he's a kid that can go, you know what, I can go play for Coach K because, like I said, that's really like, that's a bad thing to go play for a great coach like that. I'm more on the fact of, is this with the like 6 years more money? It
could be scary to lock in.
Is it one of those things where we see more drafts like the Anthony Bennett draft because players go, you know what? I don't like this team. This is where I'm projected to go. I'll go back to college. I'm not saying we're definitely going to see that, but it's interesting to see if that will play a factor into it.
I understand your point. I just don't think it's going to be happening just because of the obviously risk of getting injured and losing out on a year of money, which is a year of getting closer to a max deal of 6 years, $250 million. And then all the
sponsorships. I mean, you got to think about like in today's NBA, contracts make so much of sponsors.
Yeah, and we talked a little about rookies here, but really, I mean, the big thing was super teams. Then obviously the money extensions that we talked about, where if you're re-signing with the team, you can get significantly more money, which is going to help lower and small market teams. But also the one thing too is less games, and it's an easier schedule for these players. Shorten up the preseason, and then you're moving the season a week forward, so then games are more spaced out. You're not getting 4 games in 5 days. So what do you think that will really do to improve the NBA, at least from a product standpoint, because these guys are going to be more well rested? You're not going to see LeBron James, K-Love, and Kyrie Irving not making the trip to Memphis. Do you think that this can possibly improve the NBA play?
I'm more on the fact of, I think that, I know it wouldn't have ever happened, but I look at it and I go, I know it's all about money, but I look at the lockout year we had a couple years ago. Season started on Christmas, went to the same time. I went, well, why move the season up to space out the games? Why not take away some games? Just have the season start on Christmas, start this weekend. Football's gearing up for the end. Because let's be honest, like, I know Dave is the one. I know, Sean, it's money. That's what I said at the beginning. But, like, I know, like, Dave, really big into NBA.
Yep.
Where it's like, but most of us, like, I'll admit, I'm one where if I'm going to choose between an NFL game and an NBA one right now, I'm choosing football each and every time. You're going to get an NFL season that's more towards the end into playoffs, so you won't have to compete with them right in the heat of their middle of their season. I like that. Season started on Christmas, had a big bang. You get 5 big marquee games, and then you get to go a shorter season, which you won't get those, I could get wear and tear because it's less games.
It's the same reason every year. It's the same reason there's an expansion team in Charlotte. It's the same reason there's an expansion team there was an expansion team in Vancouver. I mean, you're able to make a ton of money off of the NBA, and that's the only reason why that's going to happen, and that's not going to change. But at least players will be able to regenerate. They'll be able to rest. They'll be able to take games off and still play near 82 games instead of LeBron playing 76 because he took a couple games off. So I think that's one thing that's going to help players, and plus we might see more opportunities for players to play 82 games and players to go on these crazy streaks and players to be able to win all 82 games. Or Russ won't be able to have to take a game off. He'll be able to rest after a triple double and then go out and be well rested there. So I think it's definitely going to improve the actual games that the NBA will be playing, because you won't be seeing guys playing 22 minutes where DeMar DeRozan just played 45 and then has to play 22 because he's playing the 76ers. He can go for 45 again, and he doesn't have to worry about getting injured. One thing we didn't touch on too about the new CBA, they just deflected on the one and done rule completely. So that's another year of not even addressing the one and done rule. Do you think that's a problem, at least for the NBA?
Well,
we've talked about it before, but do you think they should have talked about it?
I mean, that's why I brought up before with how that the contracts might affect the draft, because really, they didn't change anything about the one and done. I'm on the proponent of they need to, because what this is going to do is, let's say nothing changes with the draft. Well, you're going to be having kids coming in, and these superstars are going to be on that team, and it's going to be, I'm going to use the Pelicans again. You miss on a draft pick, and it's going to be like, great, this year was a waste. This year was a waste. We didn't get anybody, especially if that draft pick is a dud.
Yeah, and I think with what we talked about one and done to till it's dead pretty much, and we're all in agreement that that players should be getting paid in college. And just to wrap up the CBA talk, Dave, is the CBA good for the NBA? And then any final thoughts in the CBA that's really sticking out?
I think it's great for the NBA. The base salary went up across the board for all these players. They deserve to get more money. I think that's one of the biggest discrepancies in sports is the fact that, in the NBA, players get so much more money out of contracts than they do out of their actual teams. Owners end up pocketing way more cash percentage-wise than any other sport. So I'm happy that players are finally getting something to their benefit. The downside is, free agency is a loss now. But I think all in all, it sets up the NBA for... The players have a very outspoken, thing when it comes to the NBA Players Union rather than any other league's union. So I think that the NBA has a better chance to guide it to where they want to. We talked about lengthening out the season, spreading things out. It's better for their health. And now that the increased cap money is there for contracts as you get older, and we're going to see players older in this league playing more because they'll have that spaced out season. So I think all in all, the players are going to get more money. And we're going to see healthier players long term. I think injuries hopefully should go down now.
I want to throw out one question to you, Dave. I know before the podcast you mentioned how most of the guys near the top for the Players Union are LeBron, CP3, Melo, D. Wade. I want to put yourselves in the shoe of an Anthony Davis.
Yep.
Are you a little bit angry?
Big shoes there, Dave.
Are you a little bit angry with them because now you're sitting there going, well, okay, I was going to leave, but I guess I need to stay because it seems like you four just want to fill your pockets up.
Yeah, and just to kind of clarify that, one of the proponents in the new CBA is that players who are the age for the long-term contracts has been raised up from 36 to 38. So now you can get a long-term contract at 38. Basically, we're going to see LeBron getting a potential $50 million a year contract. Of course, CP3 and Melo will be roughly the same range, and Wade up there as well. I mean, it's just absolutely silly amounts of money. And yeah, I think it does kind of hurt guys who are in poor situations. But at the same time, you got to think that, look, you got to think long term. And really, that's what the CBA is not a one-year deal for a reason. It's setting up the future of this league for multiple years at a time. So that way things aren't going to change every year, and you have that stable base to know that Anthony Davis, look, you'll get yours, kid. Just be patient, and one day you're going to keep collecting those ridiculous paychecks.
And one thing, too, I mean, media backlash and just fan backlash is going to be a huge thing, too, because if these GMs aren't able to bring a winning team to a city like New Orleans, and they see a player like Anthony Davis, and they're losing out on the draft consistently, not only are you going to see your GM fired because they're not bringing a positive team, and teams and your fans are getting less interested in the product, so then the owner's going to be wanting to bring in more players. New GMs will see, all right, what was the old regime doing wrong, and they're seeing a player in Anthony Davis who's now 28 years old, 20 or 30 years old, who's been wasting his career in New Orleans, but can still get a huge return on the trade market. I think that it might hurt him immediately, and maybe he does want to stay in New Orleans, but it might hurt him immediately, the fact that he will he'll have to take $250 million and play for New Orleans. But then the fact that he will be able to play later on and get more money later on as well. But you wanted to bring something up.
One final question for you guys. Do you think that at any time the NBA could go towards a non-capped contracts like the MLB has, where you can just dole out cash left and right?
No.
I think the fact that I think the MLB it won't go away from that, but the fact that you look at the NFL and how that's built, how they try to get parity, how the NHL does that as well, and cap restrictions are tighter on teams that just won championships. It's to keep markets flowing, and the fact with the MLB is they kill it in larger markets. I mean, if you look at the World Series, you're killing it in Chicago because I've won because of the Cubs long reign of not being in there, but the fact that Chicago is a bigger market.
There are people that are trying to get a cap on baseball so you don't get like the Yankees of the 90s and the Steinbrenner Yankees.
But that's the smaller markets, and the fact with baseball is their ratings have been going down and down and down and down, but recently we've seen them go up and up and up, and that's more because of the bigger markets are able to spend more money, bring in more people, and then you're getting bigger markets coming in, and then the fact when you see big markets like Chicago hasn't been there, you're going to get a more nationwide fandom
you get a massive influx of new fans to the game because of all those young players, and that's why I think that if you spend more money, you're forcing the other owners to spend more money. I don't think you can go lopsided. I know the Athletics are like one of those teams where they're notoriously cheap, and I know there's teams equivalent to that in the NBA, but like forcing teams to spend money should not be seen as like the ultimate bad thing in the NBA. I think that's a better direction to go, and then these like weird locked in contract situations.
It's one of those things where I take it to effect. I'm going to bring this to, I can't remember if it was Sean or Dave, which one of you guys brought it up, but Vancouver. Why there was a team in Vancouver? Why is there no longer a team in Vancouver? Oh, that's right, because nobody wanted to go play for Vancouver. And there's going to be like if we get rid of a cap, there are going to be the low market teams. Nobody's going to want to go play for you. It's going to be okay. So the NBA season's in January, February, December. I'm going to go to somewhere that's warm.
But what Dave's saying is more of smaller markets might be able to give one player so much money where other teams in larger markets won't be able to give that sole player that much money. Like more of if you see a guy like Chandler Parsons and
these upper
fucking Sacramento slobbering over Chandler Parsons, and they're like, all right, we're going to give you $280 million. Every other team's like, yeah, we were going to give him like 190. We'll pass.
Like,
is that really a good business move to give one player
that's
much
the
money?
It was, but what I'm saying is like that could happen, and I mean,
would that lead to a better NBA? Is the question.
No, but I think that
it's
cap,
an interesting thought for the direction of the NBA.
I think a cap is a very smart thing, and I think the new CBA has put in a lot of positives because you're expanding. You're able to have two-way contracts now for fringe players. You're expanding their money that they're making. You're going to bring more players from overseas, like guys like Rudy Fernandez, and bring them over to the NBA. And I'm just using him as just as a small thing, just because I love Rudy. But you're able to bring him over. He's able to make more money. He's be able to play in the D League, play in the NBA. I know he's like 32, but still, the fact that you'll be able to get veterans more money, you'll be able to get younger guys more money, and they'll be able to make a living wage, possibly being able to work up to an NBA franchise. But I think that for small markets, for big markets, I think that it is good because it's going to force large markets to draft well, like the Los Angeles Lakers. It's going to force the New York Knicks to go away from their old style of just throwing a ton of money at free agents, and obviously that's hurt them in the long run for most part. And then it's going to go to small teams like the San Antonio Spurs and Utah Jazz to draft well, and then when they try to leave, you'll be able to keep them.